Welcome to my last video on the Evans Gambit, and after this video you should be fully prepared to give this exciting opening a whirl. Come on, be a romantic player, get attacking, get the Evans Gambit out, and it is a really interesting opening and one that you can have a lot of fun playing. So this is kind of what I try to do with these spicy openings. You know, I try to teach you something, but I try to teach you something that I find fun and that I think most other people will find fun to play. I mean, I don't really like boring, sort of stodgy positions where you have to, like, wait for hours until anything happens. I want some excitement, some fireworks on the board. And if you look at my other videos, you can probably see that this is what I try to get across in these premium videos here. So we're now going to look at any other options, really, that you have to be concerned about that black can play against the Evans Gambit. And after the starting move, so let's just get to the main position with b4, and you should all be accustomed to this setup by now. What can black play? Well, we're mainly concentrating on bishop b6, a4, as in the previous video, a6. This is what we're mainly going to look at, and I'm just going to give you some ideas of how you can play against this. But also, I thought I better just show you something that Robert Hess once played. And Robert Hess, of course, who does a lot of stuff for chess.com, one of the main guys here. And actually, as I'm about to film this, you will already know the result of the Carlsen Nakamura match. But I'm so excited because in a couple of hours that match is going to be live, and I think Robert Hess will be commentating on that. But it's funny because I found a game, Hikaru Nakamura versus Robert Hess, which went bishop takes b4. And now, if you've seen the first three videos, you know the whole point of playing against this is c3. And I saw that Robert, in this position, once tried bishop d6. Now, I didn't say much about this, but I'm going to give it a little bit more respect as Robert did play it. I don't believe it's a good move because black now has to ask himself the question, how are you going to move the d-pawn? How are you going to develop the bishop? And then how are you going to develop the rook? This one move, bishop d6, seems to clog up all of those pieces. So naturally, what I'm going to ask you to do now is try to just find natural moves to attack black's position. And if you remember the first three videos, I had this rule of going d4, castling, and then attacking f7. And this is something that if you ever forget the actual moves you're supposed to be playing, just go for this plan. d4, castles, attack f7. So, well, okay, I mean, I kind of given away what you should do here. I mean, the whole point of playing the Evans Gambit with c3 is to play d4. And now this is your compensation, your big center here. I mean, Robert Hess's idea is to control the e5 square, but Hikaru is going to show why this is maybe a dangerous idea to play this way as black. So what does black do? Well, he has to be quite careful already. I mean, queen e7 was Robert's choice just to really try and enforce this square. If he plays a move like knight to f6, well, there's a couple of good options here. I mean, in actual fact, I think white may become very close to winning a piece here. For example, if you just go pawn takes e5, knight takes e5 would be a big mistake because a knight takes an f4. But I think black may be okay here. If you go pawn takes e5 with a move like bishop takes e5, maybe. Even here, I'm not sure. But I think a very logical move here, and one I'd be tempted to play, would be knight to g5. And the idea is to go f4 next. I mean, let's have a look how Hikaru played in the game, because it's very similar to this. It went queen e7, and now Hikaru just castled here. And after castling, knight to f6. And here, well, now we've done our moves. We aim for f7, so knight to g5. And after castles, I really like the move f4 here. And this is the kind of thing I think is a great way to play against this setup. So basically, remember, if your opponent goes bishop to d6, put your pawn on d4 and await for knight to f6. This knight has to go to f6 at some point, and then your plan is knight g5 and f4. Now, the idea of knight g5 and f4 would not work very well if the bishop on d6 was elsewhere, because the whole point of this plan is if something like pawn takes e4, you're going to go e5 at the right moment, and it's a very nasty fork you're going to create there. In actual fact, Hikaru did not go e5 straight away, which is a perfectly okay move. He went rook e1 first, just making this threat even stronger here. And he got a very big attack after knight to e8, queen to h5. And I think it's easy to see just how dangerous this position is for black now. So really, that is my way of playing if they take on b4 and play bishop to d6. So let's now go back to the declined variation. So after b4, bishop to b6. And my suggestion is always a4 here. Now, in the previous video, Garry Kasparov showed us what you're supposed to do against the move a5 here, so we're not going to cover that. We're going to concentrate on a6. Now, you can play this in a slow positional way, but I wouldn't recommend that because that's not in the spirit of the Evans Gambit. It's not in the spirit of our spicy openings. I mean, for example, c3 here is a very fine move where you can claim an advantage because of your space advantage on the queen side. But you're going to have quite a long maneuvering game here. So I don't want to play this move. I think the best way to play here and the most dynamic way is to try and move a knight quickly into d5, because that would take advantage of the bishop on b6, which is a little bit weakened. It's a little bit under fire to knight takes b6, which would ruin black's pawn structure. So here, I would suggest you go knight c3. And after something like knight to f6, well, this must be the best move, knight to d5 straight away. And this keeps the pressure on black, keeps aiming for a tactical game. And already black has to be very careful here. What can black play? Well, the best move, in my opinion, is knight takes knight, getting rid of that pawn. In actual fact, ex-world champion Mikhail Botvinnik once played knight takes e4 here with the black pieces, but he lost extremely quickly in only 19 moves with this move. And if a world champion loses in 19 moves, it's certainly something to, well, I would say not repeat. And here, white should just play quickly with castling. This defends f2. And the problem black has here is the knight on d5 is so strong. And white's plan is d3, bishop g5. All of white's pieces will come into the game. And I think if black's going to accept the Evans Gambit, this is a bad gambit to accept. For example, Botvinnik's game continued castling, pawn to d3, attacking that knight, and knight to f6, bishop g5. And already there are serious problems with the black position. We are threatening to take on f6, destroying black's kingside. And after d6, white played a very clever move here. He didn't release the tension straight away. Why should he? That knight is pinned. There's no reason to take it. He first played knight to d2. And that knight is coming to e4. The queen is coming to the king side. Oh, my words. This is a disaster for black. Poor old Botvinnik. So to go over that line again, against a6, I think you should go knight c3, trying to get your knight to d5 quickly. And after knight f6, knight d5, black shouldn't take on e4. If he plays any other move, you're probably just going to take the bishop and go d3 with a very nice pawn structure. So the best idea is knight takes d5. Here, for a change, I think you should keep the pressure up because we're trying to play in a tactical way. Again, you can play bishop takes d5, but it's not very good here. You might even fall for knight takes b4. Keep the threats up here. Pawn takes d5 is a much better move in my eyes, this move here, because this move keeps the pressure up, it attacks the knights, and again, black can go horribly wrong here. If he goes knight takes b4, that knight will be trapped after c3. So you're keeping the pressure up against his position. Black has to play knight d4. Other moves would just be too passive. And now the best move in my eyes is a5. Another interesting option here, and one you might want to consider, is the gambit d6, and this is my main suggestion that you guys play at some point. Not mean in the game we're going to see that white should play after a5 and then d6, but the whole point of this, like we see so often in the Evans Gambit, is to make it very hard for black to develop his queenside pieces, because black wants to play d6 himself to get the bishop out and then to get the rook in the game. So this pawn sacrifice d6 is a disruptive sacrifice. It's a disruptive sacrifice to, let's say, keep black's pieces in their home under house arrest. They're not allowed out, otherwise they go back to prison. And also, another good thing is we open up our bishop. So this idea, d6, is really the main idea I want you to remember once you have swapped off your queenside knight. So get rid of that knight first and then go for pawn takes d5 and d6. These are really the main principles that you should remember. I mean, for example here, the whole point is that if, well, queen to f6 has been played, but even these positions seem very good to me for white after even the endings, and they're not boring endings. For example, c3, knight takes f3, queen takes f3, and you can even allow the doubling of your pawns, because after pawn takes d6, a5, bishop a7, bishop d5. I think this is a really good position for white here, because all of black's queenside pieces are trapped, and white has ideas here of just going rook g1 and just attacking on that area of the board. Even with f4 coming up, there's a lot of pressure, and I really believe white has a very comfortable and nice game in this kind of position. I mean, for example, let's have a look at we'll just go back to reinforce the ideas. So after a6, our first plan one is to get the knight to d5. This is plan one to remember. So knight c3, knight d5. Now, black can already go wrong here, but if he takes on d5, plan two is to go pawn takes d5, because you're gaining time and you're getting ready for d6. Now, knight to d4 is the correct move. We've just looked at the interesting move d6 straight away. I think an improvement on this is to go a5 first, because this forces the bishop to go to a7, and now I'd recommend you play the move d6. Again, this cramping move, for example, pawn takes d6, and here I think c3 is a better version of what we just looked at, because you can keep the queens on the board, and this must be a little bit more exciting. If knight takes f3, we bring our queen to f3, and we're already threatening nasty things over here. Knight to e6 is maybe a better option, but after castles, white has long-term pressure because of black's bad pieces over here. They can't spring to life, especially this poor bishop on c8. And after castles, what would you play here? Let's just have a think about this and see how you're getting on with the Evans Gambit. A little test for you here. What would you play? Pause the video if you need to and have a think about this position. Well, I think the move played is the best move, d4. And this is a typical, again, Evans Gambit move. We strike in the center. Our bishop may have chances to move over to the king side later. So if you found d4, well done. Now, the game in question continued queen c7. And now the best square for that bishop, bishop d5. Remember, on d5, the bishop suffocates the squares over here. This does offer a pawn on c3. But if queen takes c3, well, a very dangerous pawn to take there. There are a number of options, but something along the lines of the rook swinger, rook to a3, queen takes b4, and now you want to try to get this rook over to the king side would be very dangerous. I mean, even rook b3 here leaves the queen struggling for air. But all in all, this is a very dangerous position. I mean, another simple move is just to win one pawn back. Pawn takes e5. And if pawn takes e5, knight takes e5. And here the rook is coming over. Your pieces are very dangerously placed. And black is still struggling with his queen side. So this is why in the game, just to show you some ideas, after bishop d5, black tried rook to b8 because he wants to move his b pawn, go bishop b7. But now queen d3 was a nice move. And now after here, I think white should have tried something with knight g5 now. Had he played this, a big attack. The f-pawn is coming up the board, and this pawn sacrifice has worked very well. So that's really, I'm going to keep this video quite short and sweet. I don't want to overcomplicate things. Let's just go through these declined lines one more time. If a5, well, then we go b5 because black doesn't have the a5 square. If a6, we do the plans we mentioned, knight into d5, take with the e-pawn and play d6. And that is really all I want to say about the Evans Gambit. And I really hope you'll give it a go. It's a lot of fun, can lead to some very exciting positions. And more importantly, you will enjoy playing it. It's been played by some of the top players in the world like Kasparov, so it has their seal of approval, which is quite a big seal of approval, even better than the Ginger GM seal of approval. And it's just a lot of fun to play. So let me know what you think about this video. Also, leave some suggestions for future videos in the boxes below, because even if I don't get a chance to respond to your comments, I do often read them and get ideas about what to do next. And I like listening to you guys and trying to do what you want. So please do leave your comments below. But thank you so much for watching this video. That's enough of me yabbering on. I'll be gone for now. See you all soon.